All right, so, by the way, that Starfield song, I don't know if you guys know, Unashamed, that was one of my favorite songs in high school. And if you haven't checked it out, it's on The Beauty and the Broken, 2006. Just go to YouTube and look up that whole CD, okay? It was, in my opinion, one of the best worship albums released in the history of the world, okay? So check that out. My name is Larry, and I'm originally from San Jose, California. Anybody from California? Probably not. Oh, awesome! That's a rare thing out here, but that's awesome. And I currently live in Baltimore, just like you said, and I went to Cornell, graduated with an engineering degree in 2012, and then after that, I decided to pursue a career in vocational ministry. Most people who graduate with engineering degrees, they pursue a career in engineering, but I didn't do that. So some people might say I wasted my degree, and I would say no. Actually, I think that there's no greater need in the world than in the area of pushing the gospel forward. And it doesn't matter what degree you have. I think you can apply anywhere. So if you're on the fence, just a quick plug, okay? If you have this little thought in your mind, I'm majoring in business or biology or whatever, but I might consider, going into vocational ministry. Don't let your degree get in the way. Okay, anyways, I worked for Epic right after I graduated. Epic is this college ministry that works with Asian Americans, and I work primarily at George Mason University and a little bit here, but I don't do that anymore now. As you said, I work at the Village Church, and I'm a seminary student, and I'm a husband. And I love another thing he forgot to mention. Well, he didn't forget, but I didn't mention it to him. But I just thought of this because it's in my mind right now. I love Panda Express, okay? And when I worked here at Maryland, I got Panda Express basically every single time I came to College Park. And I had it today. And it was probably the first time I had it in at least a year or so. So, anyways. Not relevant. So John Shumway, he told me that the goal of these talks this semester, we're going through the Sermon on the Mount, is to help create a community that loves, challenges, encourages one another to follow Jesus in radical obedience. Okay, so I hope to do a little bit of that today. We're going to be reading through Matthew 5:21 to 26, and I have this on the screen. You probably saw it already because I'm so bad with the mouse. Oh, there I go again. Okay, here we go. So if you have a Bible, a lot of times when speakers come and they put verses on the screen, I like to whip out my Bible because I'm always make sure the speaker's not saying anything heretical. But so if you have a Bible, you can whip it out. If not, you can just follow along. I'll just read this. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you'll never get out until you have paid the last penny. So I'm going to establish the context real quick. I know that some of you guys are probably familiar with this, but I'll establish this real quick because I think it's necessary. Whenever we plunge into reading the Bible, we got to know why is this passage in the place where it is in the Bible. Otherwise, it's like, watching a movie. You hop in a room, some of your friends are watching a movie, and it's halfway through already, and you see, a guy who's looks like he's shot, and he's proposing to this woman, and you have all these questions. Who is this guy? Who is this woman? Who shot this guy? So it's important to know the context to understand what's going on, right? So I'm going to talk about the greater context, okay, and the immediate context. And some of this might be a review for you guys, but here we go. So the greater context and the immediate context. The greater context is the Sermon on the Mount, and that's Matthew 5 through 7, okay? And the immediate context, I would say, is Matthew 5:17 to 48. So let's talk about the greater context real quick. All right. So if you grew up in the church, okay, some of you guys probably grew up in church. I grew up going to church. Not that you grew up, not like you were born in the church, but like you went to church often as a child. Okay, you might have a tendency to normalize the Bible. Okay, and what I mean by that is, if you are totally not exposed to the Bible, and you open the Bible up for the first time, you read some stuff here and there are probably going to be some things that you read that you might think is kind of crazy. Okay, it'll sound a little bit ridiculous. It'll sound a little bit like, what is this guy even talking about? Okay, but for us, if we grew up reading the Bible a lot, we tend to normalize them, so all these things, they lose their awe, right? They lose their amazement. Okay, and so, we read about the burning bush, or the guy Jesus walking on the water, and you go, oh, that's just, him walking on water, no big deal. Right? But that's amazing. That's ridiculous. That doesn't happen normally. And similarly, the thing about the Sermon on the Mount is there's a lot of stuff that Jesus says here that's ridiculous. Okay? If you're not a Christian, you're new to the Bible, you read some of the stuff, you might think Jesus is archaic, or he's a little bit simplistic, or idealistic, unrealistic, whatever, right? He says stuff like, love your enemies. Okay? That's not, that... In today's world, you might think, love your enemies, that's not the way to go. Or if someone hits you on the cheek, you gotta turn your other cheek, okay? So he hits you again. You might be a little confused. Why does Jesus say stuff like that, right? Sounds a little ridiculous. What's the application for someone hitting you on the cheek? Does this mean like if I'm driving on a highway, right, and someone rams me on the right side, should I get on his right side so he can ram me again on the left side? What do I do? What is the application for something like this, right? And so, here's the deal. Here's what I think, okay? The Sermon on the Mount is a picture of kingdom living. Okay? The Sermon on the Mount is a picture of kingdom living. Okay? And what I mean by that is, Jesus, when He came, He established Himself as a king. Okay? And He said, if you want to follow me, that means you're going to be a citizen of this kingdom. And the way this kingdom works is it runs contrary to everything this world has ever known. Okay? It's totally different. It's upside down. Okay? And the Sermon on the Mount is His way of explaining what the values and the expectations of this kingdom are. Okay? What the values and expectations of this kingdom are. In this kingdom, this is how you behave. In this kingdom, this is what a citizen does. Okay? And it's like applying for a job, right? Some of you guys might have applied for jobs. I applied for many jobs my senior year, and I ended up not getting most of them, so I decided to go into ministry. Just kidding, but so it's like applying for a job, right? When you apply for a job, the company gives you values and expectations, okay? This is so-and-so company, and we value integrity, or we value community, or whatever, okay? That's their value, and they have expectations. In order to have this job, you need proficiency in Microsoft Excel or whatever, okay? But that's kind of like what it is. So in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is saying, these are the values and expectations for a citizen of this kingdom, okay? So that's the greater context, okay? The immediate context is this section, Matthew 5:17 to 48, in which Jesus is claiming that He is fulfilling the law, okay? And the reason why I say that is because in Matthew 5:17, Jesus starts out and He says, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Okay, so what does it mean that He's fulfilling these laws? And then He goes on to make there's 6 subsections that are very similar, okay? He goes, it's not exactly the same, but He says something like, you have heard it said, or it was written, or it was said, or whatever. And then He says something. And then He says, but I say to you. And then He says something else, okay? And you can follow Matthew 5. He does that 6 times. You have heard it said, don't murder, but I say to you, whatever. You have heard it said, don't commit adultery, but I say to you. And He goes on. 6 times He does this, okay? So this is one section. So it's important to understand that what we're reading today is part of this overall section, okay? So when Jesus does that, okay, I think His point is, we're not supposed to be legalists when we hear the commands of God, okay? What I mean by that is, the kingdom of God is not about literally following the actual words necessarily, okay? Because Jesus is saying, when Jesus is saying He's fulfilling the law, He is actually revealing to us the true requirements of the law. Okay, the true requirements of the law. He's saying, okay, you Pharisees or whoever He's talking to, you guys, you think you're obeying the law because you've never murdered anybody? Guess what? You're not obeying the law, okay? Because this law is deeper than you think. You think it's just, you follow these words, okay? It's actually not just these words, it's something else, okay? A legalist is someone who just follows these words literally, okay? But Jesus is saying it's more than just these words, it's something else, okay? So what does it mean to be a legalist? Well, being a legalist means you're probably more concerned about the requirements of God than you are about your relationship with God. Being a legalist means you're probably more concerned about the requirements of God than you are about your relationship with God. Another way to think about it, being a legalist means you're more concerned about the consequences of sin rather than sin itself. Okay, you're more concerned about the consequences of sin rather than the sin itself. Let's say you sin badly in some way, okay? And instead of feeling guilty about the actual sin, instead of feeling bad that you've hurt God, you made God sorrowful, you're thinking, man, so-and-so will think of me this way because I did this thing, so I can't tell this person, or man, I hurt this person, now this person doesn't like me. So you're thinking about the consequences of sin. That's being a legalist, okay? And it's not just in the Christian world, okay? People, I think, all around, just in general, the human race, we have a tendency to be legalists, okay? And that's just part of our nature. We have a tendency to want to turn things into rules, for example, or turn things into requirements. For example, like when you choose your classes for the semester, right? When you go through, I don't know how it works in your school. You have a registration time. You pick your classes for the semester. I would imagine most of you, maybe some of you guys are not like this, but I would say most of you, because I was like this. Most of you, when you choose classes, you're not thinking, what classes can I choose that will enhance my mind? Okay, you're thinking, what do I need to graduate? Okay, what are the requirements that I need to graduate? And what are you doing right there? You're being a legalist in some sense because you're thinking about what you're supposed to do. You're thinking about what you need to meet, right? What is necessary for you to get a piece of paper after 4 years, okay? Or 5 or 6, however long it takes. Okay? Or another thing is, let's say you're playing a game, a video game, or a computer game, or whatever. Most of you, you're not thinking, what game, how can I best play this game to maximize my relaxation and enjoyment? You're thinking, how can I beat this guy? Right? How can I beat this guy? Or how can I hit the score? Or whatever. Okay, that's just how it works. I got this Fitbit over Christmas, and Fitbits are awesome for legalists, okay, because I'm always thinking, does anybody not know what this is? It just tracks your steps for the day. It moves around. You move your arm and it tracks how many steps. You have this phone app and you see how many steps, and you have a bunch of friends and you look at all your friends' steps and you see how many steps you have and you feel terrible about yourself for not exercising, right? So that's what a Fitbit is, and Fitbits are perfect for legalists because they're always comparing themselves and not thinking, oh, I'm walking because this is healthy for me. They're thinking, I gotta walk to beat this guy, okay? And that's what I do, right? So we have this tendency to be legalists, okay? And as Christians, we bring that when we read the Bible. Alright, when we read the Bible, we're thinking, oftentimes, am I doing what the Bible commands? Am I on track? What's my spirituality score? Okay, if God were to evaluate my relationship right now, what percentage would He give me? What grade would He give me? We're often thinking like that. But I would propose that's not primarily what God thinks about. Okay, I think that when God thinks about you, He is not concerned about your spirituality score or whatever. He's thinking, does this person know me? Does this person have my heart? Okay, and that's something totally different than just meeting some standard. Right? That's something totally different than just meeting some standard. So here's the big idea. The kingdom is not about legalism. It's not about following the letter of the law. The kingdom is about knowing and imitating God's heart. And I'll get to this in a little bit. But God is more concerned about who you are than about what you do. Okay, God is more concerned about who you are than what you do. And one of the reasons why I say that is, if you skip to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, one of the last sections, is you have all these guys, Jesus is saying, at the end of the age, people will come to me and they'll say, I did this, I did this, I did this. And Jesus said, I never knew you. Okay? All these people who did all sorts of things, at the end of the day, God doesn't care. Because what He cares about is whether you know Him. So here's a big idea. That was not the big idea. That was the pre-big idea. Here's a big idea. God does not call the citizens of His kingdom to action-oriented legalism, but to heart-oriented reconciliation. God does not call the citizens of His kingdom to action-oriented legalism, but to heart-oriented reconciliation. So, let's dive into this passage real quick. We'll divide it into a few sections. Verses 21 and 22. Okay? Verses 21 and 22. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council. Whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. So, Jesus is saying, okay, you know this law, don't murder. Everyone knows that law, okay? But that's not the point. The point is not the action. You can't treat it legalistically. It's about the heart, okay? And so, when we read this command, but even if we read this command, Jesus is saying, don't be a legalist. Even when we read that, don't be a legalist, okay? We tend to think legalistically. What do I mean? Okay, we think like this, okay? Oh, Jesus says, if you're angry at your brother, it's game over, okay? So, what does it mean to be angry? Okay, so like, if somebody, cuts me off on the highway and I honk at him, is that being angry? Or like, if I'm in line for Panda Express and then 3 people in front of me all get chow mein, and then I'm there and I don't get chow mein because there's no more. I said, hey dude, where's my chow mein? Is that angry? Okay, so we think like that. What we're doing then is we're thinking, okay, am I satisfying the requirements of this law? Okay, do you catch what I'm saying? When we do that, when we think that way, we're being legalist. Okay, and here's the thing: Jesus at times was angry. Right? There are times if you read the Gospels, there are places where it says Jesus was angry. Okay, so what does that mean? Did Jesus break His own rule? No, I would say, because Jesus did not mean for you to interpret this legalistically. He did not mean to say, if at any time in your life you ever have a hint of anger, it's game over. I don't think that's what He meant. I think He's talking about the heart. He's talking about something to do with the heart, okay? What is He talking about? We'll get there in a little bit. But here's another example, okay? Jesus says, don't call people fools. Okay? I've called someone a fool before. Actually, just a fun fact, in the Greek, this word fool, it's moros, and we get the word moron from it. Okay? So, I've called someone a moron before. Okay? Does that mean that's game over for me? I would say, not necessarily, because Jesus actually called people fools. There's a part in Matthew where He called Pharisees blind fools, which is probably even worse than just seeing fools, okay? And there's a part in Galatians where Paul says, you foolish Galatians, okay? So does that mean Jesus and Paul are breaking the rule? I don't think so. I think it's deeper than just the action of calling someone a fool or not a fool. I think it's part of the heart, okay? So we're not supposed to look at this passage legalistically, so how do we look at it? Okay, so I think it's important to know there's this thing called parallelism here, okay? And you might go, oh, I know what parallelism is. That's when you have 2 lines on the same plane, and if you were to stretch them infinitely, they never intersect, okay? That's one definition, but that's not what I'm talking about, okay? In the Bible, in ancient times, parallelism is a literary device in which you give a statement, and then you give a similar statement with similar words, but you change a few things. Okay, that's what parallelism. And then you might have another statement or another statement, whatever. Specifically, this is synonymous parallelism. What that means is, He's not saying there are 3 types of people, and one person, one person does this, and one person does this, and one person does this, and for the first person, this is what happens. For the second person, what He's saying is, there is one type of person, okay? And this type of person, it's hard to explain this type of person in just one sentence, okay? So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain it in 3 different ways, okay? This is just a literary device that people use. And this type of person, is prone to being angry at his brothers. This type of person is prone to insult his brothers. This type of person is prone to call people fools. Okay, so that's the type of person. So he's talking about there's this type of heart that you have that is prone to doing all these things. And he says, don't have that kind of heart. Does that make sense? So he's not saying necessarily these actions are not what you're supposed to do, but he's saying there is this type of heart that you can have that is prone to doing these things. Don't have that kind of heart. Alright, so The main point is not that we should not do these things, be angry, call people stupid, okay? Even though most of the time it's not good to do those things. The point is, we should not have this type of heart that is prone to doing those things. Okay, so what type of heart should we have? Okay, that's the next section. Okay, 23 and 24. Jesus goes on to say, so if you are offering your gift at the altar, okay, in our world, personally, I have never, ever offered a gift on an altar, okay? I don't know if I've ever even seen an altar before, okay? And most of you, I would imagine, you've never offered a gift on an altar. But essentially what he's saying is, whenever you have a spiritual encounter with God, okay? Whenever you are going to a holy place to worship God, okay? That might be going to church, that might be going to Ohana, that might be praying, that might be, reading the Bible, whatever you're doing. Whenever you're doing something, interacting with God in some way, okay? When that happens, and there, remember that your brother has something against you. In other words, if there's some unreconciled issue between you and somebody else, he's saying, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and offer your gift. Okay, this is a little bit radical, okay? Because think about it. Are you saying our relationship with others is more important than our relationship with God? Why are we fixing our relationship with others first before we have a relationship with God? Does that make sense? I thought our relationship with God comes first. I agree. I think our relationship with God does come first. Okay, but let's say you have a fight with a friend on a Thursday. Okay, today's Thursday, right? Yeah, today's Thursday. Let's say you have a fight with a friend on Thursday, and you haven't reconciled. You're still figuring things out, and he calls you, hey, can you come over and talk about it? And you go, actually, I gotta go to Ohana. Bye. Okay, and you go to Ohana. Is that wrong? Right? Maybe not. I don't know. Depends on your situation. But here's what I think, okay? This is the principle. Yes, our relationship with God always comes first, but I think what Jesus is saying is, our relationship with God is intricately connected with our relationship with others. It's intricately connected with our relationship with others, so much so that if your relationship with others is not doing well, it could mean your relationship with God is not doing well. If your relationship with others is not doing well, that could be a sign your relationship with others is not doing well. In fact, I would say one of the main ways you could tell if someone has a good relationship with God is to look at that person's relationship with others. Right? It's not two separate things, okay? It's not just me and God have this thing going on and I don't care about everybody else. Your relationship with God influences your relationship with others. And I think that's what Jesus is saying. If you want a reconciled relationship with God, and God means a lot to you, that has to overflow into your life and be poured out into your relationship with other people. Okay, so let's put this all together. So Jesus is saying, there's this law, do not murder, okay? It's more than just a physical action of killing someone, okay? It's a symptom of a deeper heart issue. And that issue is you have a stubborn, hateful heart. And this heart is quick to insult, it might harbor resentment, it might be quick to judge, quick to hold grudges. And Jesus says, don't have that heart. What kind of heart should you have? A heart that seeks reconciliation. A heart that seeks harmony. A heart that seeks unity and forgiveness with others. What heart do you have? Last September, I'm married, right? I've been married for a year and a half, and you might think, I would imagine most of you guys aren't married, you might think that once you are married, that, everybody lives happily ever after. That's actually not the case, okay? Usually, when you get married, you have some happy moments and you have some sad moments, okay? That's how it works, right? And last September, around September, we just went through a tough time. Okay, just me and my wife went through a tough time. And for a variety of issues, but my wife, she had a pretty hectic summer. We both had a pretty hectic summer, but her more so. We traveled a lot and we didn't have many free weekends. And she was looking forward to Labor Day weekend. And because we had Monday off, so it was a 3-day weekend, we could spend time together, and I was totally oblivious to that. It's normal, okay? I don't really think about those things, okay? So either she didn't express it to me, or I was a bad listener. I don't really remember. But for some reason, I thought it would be a great idea to plan this event for friends at church on Saturday or Labor Day weekend, okay? Because around August, September, we have tons of new people at church, and I want to, have some social events to get people plugged in, to meet people, whatever, okay? And so that's what was going on. And a few days before, I found out that she didn't even want to go. And then I find out she didn't even want me to plan this in the first place, okay? Maybe she might phrase it differently. I don't know if she would say I found out, but I just wasn't thinking, or I don't know. But anyways, to be honest, I was pretty bitter, okay? And I was pretty resentful, and I felt like I already committed to doing this. I already bought groceries, and, I had people bring chips or whatever, and because it was a barbecue, and I decided, I'm just going to do this anyways, because I know she's upset, but I want to do this, okay? And we fought the day of, and I was like, do you want to go or not? She said, no, I don't want to go, so fine. And I left, and I went to this thing, and it was only afterwards that I realized, I had a resentful heart. I had a hateful heart. I had a stubborn heart. I could have worked things out a few days in advance, okay? I could have talked to her. I could have tried to listen, try to understand what she was going through. I didn't. Right? I bitterly went by myself to set everything up by myself, and I chose to ignore the situation. And I want you to ask yourself, has anything like that ever happened in your life? Take a moment to think a little about your own life. Because God doesn't call us to legalism, to just following some rules. Okay? If He were to ask me, did you murder your wife? I would have said no. But looking back, I did. That was the reality of the situation. I spiritually murdered my wife in my heart. So I have a few potential challenges for you. And I think Eric's going to talk a little bit about this after this. Okay, just two quick things, okay? And if you don't have to do both of these, you just do the one that applies to you, or if you want extra credit, if you want to be a legalist, you can do both of these, okay? So, first off, I want to challenge you to fight your legalism and talk to someone about this. So what I mean by that, okay? The first step, probably, for most of us, is to figure out how you are legalistic in your own life, okay? Because most people don't know they're legalists. That's the reality. That's one of the things about being a legalist, okay? You don't know you're a legalist. But I think everybody has a tendency a little bit. Okay, so, for example, why do you serve on the music team, if you're on the music team, okay? Is it because you genuinely love God, you genuinely want to worship God, you love leading others and experiencing this relationship with God, or because it just is freaking awesome to be on the worship team and you like when people see you sing, or whatever. Or you might think, it probably doesn't apply anymore, but if I ever want to be a worship pastor one day, I can have this on my resume, or whatever. Anyways, so are you primarily thinking about, okay, how often am I reading the Bible? Or how often am I praying? Or how many small group meetings am I missing? Are you thinking like that? Or are you thinking, how can I be closer to God? How can I be more saturated with the Spirit? How can I know God more? How can I let the gospel saturate my life so that it flows into others more? Those are not measurable things necessarily. Okay, but that's the way we're supposed to think. So, sometimes we say, sometimes I don't read the Bible and I feel guilty. Okay? And sometimes we have to think about it. It's not because we want to be closer to God, we want to know God more. It's because I am not following my Bible reading plan, and I'm several days behind now, okay? And so I'm not living up to my Bible reading plan, because our small group, we decided we're going to read this Bible together in this Bible reading plan, and I'm 5 days behind, okay? So are you thinking like that, or are you genuinely thinking, I want to know God more, and me not reading the Bible is making this relationship suffer? Does that make sense? So there's legalistic tendencies that we have, alright? Or, here's another example. I have sinned in this way. And you can fill in the blank. We all sin in different ways. I've sinned in this way, and I'm extremely ashamed and embarrassed about it. Are we thinking, I can't let anybody know because of what they will think of me? That's a legalistic mentality. Or are we thinking, I have hurt God through this sin, and I recognize God has forgiven me. I want to be close to God. I want to embrace God again. Does that make sense? Those are two different approaches. Okay? So think about how, in any way you have been legalistic. That's the first thing. And once you figure that out, talk to somebody about it. That's the challenge. Okay? You can share in your small group, or you can just text someone tomorrow, go, hey, do you want to meet up at Panda Express? And I want to talk. And then when you meet up, you say, hey, this is going on in my life. You know what? I realize that I've been legalistic in this way. Okay, that's the first challenge. Okay. Secondly, if this applies to you, seek reconciliation with somebody. Maybe you're perfect and you have no issues with anybody. Okay. Or maybe you're super oblivious and you don't understand emotions. Okay. So this might not apply to you. But for many of us, this applies. Okay. What it means is you have hurt somebody or somebody has hurt you, and there's still some tension. Okay. That's a reality that happens. And so think about this. In what areas in your life have you refused opportunities to reconcile with others? In what areas of your life have you chosen to feed stubbornness? In what areas of your life have you been overly angry? In what areas of your life or you can think about it this way, who in your life has made life difficult for you and you never really talked about it? Or who in your life has disagreed with you and it kind of hit a nerve? Or who do you look down upon? Okay? Who bugs you? And it can be your lab mate partner because he never chips in. Or it might be, this person because he's always talking about politics all the time. Or whatever. Okay? It can be anything. This can be a friend, it can be a significant other, it can be a roommate, a classmate, a professor, a brother, sister, a parent. It can be a total stranger. Just like, it can be someone 5 years ago, you were walking on the street and he called you a racist, he gave you a racist, I don't know, but he said something to you, okay? And you didn't like it, right? So what bothers you, okay? When those things happen, okay, when we have these tensions with other people, okay, we have two choices really. One, okay, we can react with a rude, brash, dismissive heart, okay? And of course, we might not actually do anything. We might not murder them. We might not even punch them, okay? But it might just be a murder of the heart. It might just be you stubbornly hating this person, okay? And it might be a second or it might be a year of hating this person, but it's the same concept, right? You might still have this rude heart. Or the second option is to seek reconciliation, to clarify, to communicate, to ask for forgiveness, or to forgive, or whatever it is. Reconciliation isn't easy. It's dying to yourself. It's saying, I'm hurt or I'm angry, but I'm not going to prioritize how I feel. I'm not going to prioritize my needs. I'm going to prioritize reconciliation. I'm going to prioritize making things right. Okay? And that's hard. I'm going to seek peace. I'm going to extend grace, or whatever it is. So that's the second challenge, okay? Sometime this week, sometime between now and next Thursday, seek reconciliation with somebody, okay? Just go, hey, can we talk? I just want you to know, this past month, I felt this because of this, or whatever, okay? And just share, alright? So those are two challenges. Maybe you feel a little bit overwhelmed. Maybe, okay? Because, you might think, you know what, I realize I have a stubborn heart, or I have a hateful heart, or whatever. And I want you to know, at the end of the day, because of Jesus, we are okay. Why did I say that? When Jesus said, He is here to fulfill the law, it means something deeper than Him just revealing the law to us. Okay, so here's the thing. When Jesus says He's here to reveal the law, it means two things. Okay? The first thing is that He revealed the requirements of the law. That's the 6 sections I was talking about. Here's the law, but I say this. Okay? That's the first thing it means when Jesus fulfilled the law. The second thing it means is that through the life, death, resurrection of Jesus, He also satisfied the requirements of the law. Does that make sense? So He didn't just reveal the requirements of the law, He satisfied it. Okay, so here's a verse from Romans 8. There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. For the law of the Spirit of life has set you free in Christ Jesus from the law of sin and death. For God has done what the law weakened by the flesh could not do. By sending His own Son, that's Jesus, in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, He condemned sin in the flesh in order that the righteous requirement of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Do you catch that? Jesus, when He died on the cross, He fulfilled the requirement of the law. Alright? So, when we mess up, okay, it's alright. Because Jesus already did it for us. Okay, so why does Jesus, nonetheless, expect the citizens of His kingdom to live such ridiculously high standards? Because He did it first. He lived those standards, And even though he did, he voluntarily chose to give up his rights and give up his life. In Matthew 5:25-26, in our passage, the last section, Jesus says this, right? Catch this. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you be put to prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. Here's the thing, alright? This happened to Jesus. Jesus was falsely accused. He had an accuser, alright? Jesus was brought to a high council, a Jewish high council, and at this Jewish high council, he was handed over to Pilate, the judge, essentially, and he didn't want to be a judge, he let the crowd be the judge, and the crowd called him guilty, and they handed him over to the soldiers, to the guard, essentially, who beat him to a pulp and crucified him on a cross. And why did Jesus go through that? So he can pay every last penny for us. He went through all that to pay our price, so that we can get out of prison scot-free. Right? And we can be freed from the requirements of the law. So we're going to mess up. Alright? The reality is we're going to mess up. We're going to hate people. We're going to be stubborn. We're not going to want reconciliation. But Jesus paid every last penny. And because of that, we have freedom. We don't have to be punished for not living up to God's standards. Father, thank you so much for sending your Son Jesus. Because Jesus satisfied the law, we don't have to meet the requirements of the law. God, I want to confess first and foremost, I have not kept the law. I have murdered people in my heart. I've committed adultery in my heart. I've done so many things in my heart. God, I'm not worthy. But you call me your child, and you love me still. Because of what Jesus did on the cross. And God, I want a pure heart. We want a pure heart. That's our cry. And God, we recognize we can't muster this up on our own. That's just legalism. We can't muster it up, and we need your Spirit to move in our lives and move in our hearts to change us from the inside out. Jesus, thank you so much for saving and dying for us. Your radical sacrifice, your willingness to die, gives me the hope to live a radical life. A life that is sold out for you. A life that longs to show you and manifest your glory to the world. A life that pursues reconciliation with my peers and with my friends, and even with my enemies. So that I will do things in this world and people will look at me and they go, is this guy nuts? Thank you for giving me the power, the motivation to live as a citizen of your kingdom. Help us to internalize this story of the gospel in our lives. That no matter where we go, whether we're taking classes or researching in a lab or hanging out with our friends or talking to our parents, no matter where we go, God, I pray that you would remind us day in and day out, Jesus loves us and he died for us. Because of that, we are free. But it's not a freedom of license where we do whatever the heck we want. It's a freedom to love you and to live for you. So I pray that you enable us to do that with the power of your Spirit. I pray this on your Son's name.